Okay, yeah. So hello. I can read on the chat and I can see colleagues saying that there is no sound or they're hearing nothing. But first of all, I want to acknowledge your presence in the class. Welcome all. You can just prove to me by turning on your microphone and telling me you can hear me right now. Anyone in the meeting who can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
It's okay, I can hear you.
Okay, so thank you for the confirmation. And now I believe everyone can hear me. Yeah, so our facilitator is finding a place to park alafu ndio anze class. So in the meantime, I think it will take like 3 to 5 minutes aanzishe juu ameniambia ashapata parking. We can just call our friends who are not in the class, ndio akikuja tusingojee wengine, tuanze tu class immediately. Can we confirm to that?
It's okay.
Thank you, Philemon. And if at all any one of us has a contact of a colleague who's not in the meeting,
Yes.
that is, kindly let's try and call them because our facilitator is almost here na ataanza tu class immediately.
Hey. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I hope everyone can hear me. I have just joined. I think I was in my own world. I don't know how it happened. I started this class at exactly 5:30. I was doing the class alone. I don't know what happened. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we are getting you now.
I'm sorry. I joined the. I don't know which
We
link
are
that
getting
was.
you.
You are getting me. I want to surprise you that I started this class at exactly 5:30, and I had done almost half of it. I have covered quite a lot. I was alone. I don't know how it happened. I joined a link using a link that I don't know how it happened. And I'm sorry about that. I don't know. But I think we will still have to continue. We are 18 of us. I will repeat everything that I was saying to myself because I noticed that I was saying to myself. I was actually I had started by recapping all that we have covered so far. I want to repeat exactly what I was saying in the other things that I was using, and I was starting by say I was saying that we have done this is the first for the topic in this training on monitoring and evaluation. And we started by looking at the introduction to monitoring and evaluation. You remember when you were discussing things to do with the concepts of monitoring and evaluation, the cycles of monitoring and evaluation, the importance of monitoring and evaluation. That one we did at the end. And then we came to the second topic where we discussed developing an M&E framework. If you remember developing M&E framework, I just want to give you a perspective of what we have been doing so that we are able now to link up with what we want to do today. And the second topic was developing monitoring and evaluation framework. Remember, we talked about the components of monitoring and evaluation framework. If you remember, when we discussed about those components that we find in a monitoring and evaluation framework, goals, we talked about the impacts, we talked about the result chain, remember about the theory of change. In the result chain, we said we have components such as the inputs, the activities, the outputs, the outcome, the impacts. If you remember the vertical logic in a log frame, but we also said we have the horizontal logic in a log frame, where we talk about the indicators. We talked about the verifiable source of data, or what we call the means of verification of data, the source, and then probably we also talked about the last column, which is the but we say that the framework, the M&E framework, is not only about the logical framework, which has the vertical and the logical, the vertical and the horizontal logic. We also said it must capture other aspects like who is responsible for what. It must also capture data information like where shall the data come from? What would be the means of analysis of the data, and how will be the reporting and dissemination, and also what will be the purpose of the monitoring and evaluation report. All those must be captured in the framework. We also say that we also were able to develop indicators. We also learned how to develop indicators, both qualitative and quantitative indicators. Remember that. Then we also looked at how to link indicators to goals. That was our first topic before we got into our second topic, where we looked at setting baselines and targets in monitoring and evaluation. And in this, we looked at the importance of baseline data. Remember what we said about the importance of baseline data, quite important. It is the one that gives us the foundation of the whole monitoring and evaluation process, because it tells us where we are before the intervention, and gives us the direction on where we want to go and what we want to achieve within a given period of time. We also talked about the techniques for collecting baseline data, and this one I want you to get very careful. Techniques for collecting baseline data, because if you look at what we have in our today's topic, we are talking about data collection methods in monitoring and evaluation. But this is something we have already done in for collecting baseline data. It will not be very far from that. Then we also looked at setting realistic and achievable targets. These are subtopics that you covered last time. Yes? Somebody want to say something? Yeah, last time, this is what you covered last time. That is for collecting baseline data and setting realistic and achievable targets. And this was done by Kent, and therefore I could listen here and there, but I could not be able to have continuous flow of internet because of the road network. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to cover the data collection methods in monitoring and evaluation. And in these data collection methods in monitoring and evaluation, I want to begin by looking at an introduction, or rather by saying that we have 3 subtopics as usual. The quantitative methods, not very hard or very complicated, because we are looking at surveys and tests. These are things that we have done before. And also our second topic, subtopic, will be qualitative methods. And here we also be looking at focus groups, interviews, and of course, then we will have our last subtopic, which is the mixed methods approaches, which means that in that data collection, you are having surveys, tests, focus groups, interviews mixed, so that you have both quantitative and qualitative methods going together, what we call triangulation, if you can remember that. So I want to introduce the subtopic, or the topic rather, before we go to the subtopic. And here we are saying that data collection actually is what we say is a systematic way through which information is gathered to measure indicators and assess performance, outcomes, and impact. So systematic. It is a system. It's not haphazard. It is not a knee-jerk exercise. It is organized. It is arranged. It is planned for, and that is why we say it is systematic. And from this systematic approach, we are able to gather information that will help us to measure indicators, that will help us to assess performance, it will help us to measure outcomes, and also to measure or assess the impact of a certain intervention. And therefore, we always say that in monitoring and evaluation, any method that you decide or any approach that you decide to apply in data collection, then we are saying that it must be relevant to the indicators, and these are the principles of data collection in monitoring and evaluation. Whether you are doing whether you are doing this for academic purposes, whether you are doing this for purposes of decision making, whether you are doing it for purposes of planning, whether you are doing it for purposes of accountability, and for lesson learning, then you must apply the principles of relevance, the extent that the method is relevant to the indicators. If it is an indicator that is talking about numbers, then the method must be quantitative. If it is talking about perceptions, if it's talking about behavior, attitudes, then it must be qualitative. Therefore, the element of relevant to indicators comes in very strongly there. It must be ethical. The method for data collection must be ethical and also inclusive. I want to say that when we say it must be ethical, even those who do research, either on medical, social, scientific perspective, the word ethics here applies very much, because you must respect cultures, you must respect the social setups, cultural behavior of any society, in the sense that if it is respect for gender, for example, that must be observed, including animals. So ethical is a term that must be keenly observed when you are conducting data collection inclusive also. It must be inclusive. For example, if you are doing the sampling technique in data collection, then let it be sampling, the extent that samples are picked randomly from the subjects, so that you are able to include each and every subject, so that it has a chance of being picked for that data collection method. You say in sampling, all the subjects in the population has equal opportunities of being picked in the method of data collection or in the research. Therefore, the element of being inclusive must be captured. The other principle that we must keenly observe is that data collection method that you decide to apply must be cost effective. It must be efficient in that context of being cost effective, so that you are able to spend less, but you are able to get effective data, reliable data that will be used in achieving the outcomes that are intended for that particular method, or rather for that particular monitoring and evaluation. It must also be feasible. It is something that is doable. It's applicable, and therefore feasible there comes in, that it is a method that is doable. The other principle is that it must be reliable and valid. So that method that you decide to use must be reliable in terms of usability, and also varied. It must be varied, must be consistent to the reality. So those are some of the principles forming my part of my introduction. But I want also to mention this in terms of data collection method as part of an off-cuff discussion, that for data collection, it is very important that we have reliable data, because reliable data actually forms the backbone of an effective monitoring and evaluation. Reliable data, it forms the backbone of an effective monitoring and evaluation. Without this, then whatever outcome or whatever findings that are achieved in monitoring and evaluation, we say it is spurious without reliable data. Data that can even be replicated. Somebody else can come and repeat the same method of data collection, and the results will be the same. They can be replicated. Then that is when we say the data is reliable. And if it is reliable, then it should give us effective monitoring and evaluation. Contrary to that, we get spurious data and findings in our monitoring and evaluation. Then we say that these appropriate data collection methods, they're very important because they help us in getting credible information. And remember, we said why we do monitoring and evaluation. We do monitoring and evaluation, and this was the first thing that was said by Kent when he did the introduction of this course, that it helps us in planning, it helps us in decision making, it helps us in accountability, and it helps us in learning lessons for purposes of continuous improvement, what we basically call feedback loops. Therefore, that now defines what we mean by reliable data, valid data. Because it is reliable and valid, then we can use it in planning. Because it is reliable and valid, we can use it in making decisions. We can base it, we can use accountability based on that data. And it can help us in learning lessons for purposes of continuous improvement. Ladies and gentlemen, by the time we are through with this topic, we should be able to distinguish between quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods of data collection. We should also be able to apply appropriate quantitative methods such as surveys, tests, not only in education settings, but also in all management and institutional setups. We should also be able to use qualitative methods such as focus group discussions and interviews effectively in our data collection. And we should also be able to select suitable data collection methods based on indicators, the context, and the purpose of the monitoring and evaluation. I want to explain what we mean by context. The context is the background, the environment from which our monitoring and evaluation is being conducted. So, when you are doing it in a what we call level 1 hospital, that is the context of evaluation. Data collection should be based on that level of a hospital. If it is being done in a level 5 hospital, the context will also change to that of a level 5. If it's to a national hospital like Kenyatta, referral hospitals like KU and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and the rest, then again, that context will also determine the data collection method that we are going to apply, and probably the purpose for which that data is required should also be, we should, by the time we are through with this, we should be able to have that knowledge with us. So moving on, this one we have discussed about the principles of data collection methods relevant to indicators, ethical and inclusive, cost-effective and feasible, and also reliable and varied. So let me discuss the first method of data collection, and that is quantitative data collection method. And that's what we are going to cover for today, just the quantitative data collection method. Because we have done the introduction, we have done a recap of all that we had done so far. So just before I discuss this, I want to give you an overview of the data collection methods. And in this, in my overview, I want to say that, or rather, just what I have said earlier on, that for purposes of usability of data, we say that it must be purposeful. It must be purposeful, and therefore must be systematic. Like I have said, it must be systematic. It must be planned for. It must be organized. It must probably have a budget, and therefore it is something that ought to be formalized and have an approach that is systematic. And so through that systematic ways, the information that is gathered must be able to measure the indicators. Remember, we said that for monitoring and evaluation, indicators is the key word. Performance indicators, key performance indicators. You cannot do any monitoring and evaluation without mentioning indicators. They are the basic ingredients in monitoring and evaluation. Because like we said, indicators are smart. They are specific, they are measurable, they are achievable, realistic, and also time-bound. And therefore, something that you are able to measure. And for the indicators, they help us to assess performance, right? They also help us to know the tangible, measurable outputs, outcomes, impacts, objectives, and so on and so forth. They make the aspects in the result chain tangible. They make them realistic, things that are measurable, things that can be accounted for by measure or by the fact that we can be able to experience them. And therefore, the need for the methods to be relevant to the indicators, the need for the methods to be ethical and inclusive, the need for the methods to be cost effective, and therefore the need for the methods to be feasible and reliable and also varied. So ladies and gentlemen, with that background, with that in mind, we can now be able now to move to quantitative data collection methods without fear of having said what should be said at the background. What is quantitative data collection method? Now, quantitative data collection methods, we say that they focus on collecting numerical data that can be counted, measured, and statistically analyzed. I think that when we say can be statistically analyzed, then what we are saying, we are answering to questions such as, how many, how often, to what extent. And therefore, for us to be able to answer these questions, of how many, how often, to what extent, then we are doing things like surveys and questionnaires. We are doing tests and assessments. And I want to say that quantitative data is very important. And we shall be able to see the advantages of quantitative data collection methods. One, quantitative data collection method is useful because it helps us in, from what we have said about this method, surveys and questionnaires, tests and assessments. They help us in tracking trends over time. They can help us to track trend over time. For example, if it's performance in the test scores, so we are able to know this is how the runner has been performing from the time they got into Form 1. This was the entry behavior, Term 2, Term 3, like all the way. We can be able to have a trend, can be able to track the trend. The performance of Kenya shillings over the dollar over a period of time. You can be able to conduct a survey and able to track the trend of the Kenya shillings performance over a period of time. So that is quantitative, and it helps in that. We can also be able to compare performance across several institutions, several programs. We can be able to have that comparison using quantitative data. We can also be able to measure progress against the targets. This is something we mentioned in our previous topic. You are able to measure progress from the baseline. You are able to say that now after this period of intervention, this is our progress. So quantitative data, you are able to show progress either in terms of percentage, in terms of numbers, probably in terms of ratios. You can be able to numerically say or quantify this is the progress. So this is we are talking about surveys and questionnaires, tests and assessment, and we want to look at each one of them at a time. Tests and assessments. What do we mean by tests and assessments in terms of data, quantitative data collection methods? We usually say that tests measure learners. If, for example, it's a learning setup, it is used to measure the knowledge, skills, competencies, or even attitudes using standardized or teacher developed tools. These are tests and assessments. Basically, that's what we call exams. These days, we are calling them assessments. Tests, a teacher sets a test so that they're able to measure the learners' knowledge, skills, and also the competencies, and even the attitudes. But in this case, when it comes to attitudes, you remember, attitudes, we cannot be able to measure them quantitatively. We'll be able to measure them qualitatively. And therefore, how does that work in education applications? For example, it's when you want to measure the literacy and the numeracy assessments. Teachers will set tests and assessments to measure literacy, numeracy assessments. What do you mean by literacy and numeracy assessment? Maybe somebody can indulge in this. Literacy and numeracy, what do you test? Somebody in class can unmute yourself and weigh in this discussion so that you understand what we mean by tests and assessment, what we mean by literacy and numeracy. What do you assess in literacy? What do you assess in numeracy? Hey, my class, what is happening? Mohammed Salat, I see you. Terono, Esther, where are you? Hannah Nganga.
Mwalimu maybe can go.
Yes.
In literacy, when we assess for literacy, we normally check for things like writing skills, if they're able to recognize words, if they're able to spell, to construct sentences. I'm just giving an example. I hope I'm on the right track. And also if they can read.
Reading. It's
Yes.
about reading and comprehension. Basically, it's reading and comprehension, literacy.
Yes.
Yes. So in that case, when you apply it quantitatively, how do you, what kind of data do you pick from literacy? In which category of data do you get from literacy and numeracy when you do an assessment? For example, you have set a test on reading and comprehension. What numerical data do you obtain from that? Habiba, thank you for that. Maybe if you can continue, it's okay. If somebody else could step in, the better. Because I want us to know how tests and assessments, how they help us to get quantitative data. Sorry for that. I'm waiting for that response.
I am thinking.
Yes.
I'm thinking is when after you have assessed and you have marked, you'll be able to say who is above 80%, how many were above 80, how many were above the pass mark.
Exactly. Yes, you are able to know how many learners, or you have the numbers. How many are above average? How many are below are average? How many are below average? So in literacy, you will have numerical values in terms of numbers. You can also be able to get percentages. How many have been able to get, or rather, what percentage of learners are able to read and write? What percentage of learners cannot be able to read and write? such a thing. So that way you're able to obtain quantitative data from that. What about numeracy? What do you assess in numeracy? When you set a test or an assessment in numeracy, what is it that you want to achieve? Somebody else?
If I can try, I think numeracy is the ability to apply numbers.
Numbers, yes.
Yeah.
Computations, in terms of additions, subtractions, numeracy. So therefore, it's the same thing with literacy. So how many learners can be able to do additions, subtractions, multiplications, and so on and so forth. So in terms of mathematics, you want to get data on this numeracy, and how to do that is by getting the percentages, the numbers, and so on and so forth. Then the other way we can apply tests and assessment as a data collection method. Remember here we are looking at the classroom setup is a subject mastery tests. What do you mean by subject mastery tests? Somebody? I'm asking this because I know there are teachers in the room. Subject mastery.
Yeah, Mwalimu, I can.
Please go ahead.
Yes, this is Samuel Lamroy.
Samuel Amroy, yes.
Yes. So I can say subject mastery tests is this one is meant to check whether the teacher or the person has a proper mastery of the content or the subject matter.
Retention, yeah, retention of content. So
yes,
something has been like when I'm asking this, I'm trying to assess whether whatever I have discussed up there, whether somebody has retained that knowledge, whether you can be able to retrieve the knowledge that I have already imparted in you. So if you're able to retrieve that knowledge, that the skills that has been imparted in you, then that is when we say there is subject mastery. So that's why every time you want to know whether learners have retained, absorbed what has been taught, you do the tests. Now, again, this one, we do assess learners, and by so doing, we are able to get percentages, we are able to get numbers in terms of those who have been able to master the test, the subject or the content, those who have not been able to master the content. And this can help us in decision making, because we are saying this is helping us in decision making. If, for example, we do a mastery test and we find that in our class, 70% of the learners have scored below average, then which decision do you think we can make in such an outcome? You have done an assessment, you've done a subject mastery test, and you have noted that the output in this assessment is that 70% of the learners have scored below average. What could be the use of that kind of data? Yes, I'm Roy.
Yes, I can say you will if you find that a good number of learners have scored below average, then what you need to do is you check whether it is necessary to offer remedial classes or remedial lessons.
By so doing, have you made a decision? Has the data helped you in making a decision?
Yes, the data
Yes.
has helped. Yes, yes.
It has helped you to make a decision. Let's also look at this in another context, maybe in a medical field, whereby you are testing a vaccine. A vaccine is being tested, and 100 persons are used for the test. And after the test, 80% of the subjects have been found to develop symptoms that are akin to the disease that is being vaccinated on. So instead of the vaccine giving the patient or the subject protection, instead it is generating the disease to the person. Is there a decision? You know, you say 80% have developed the disease symptoms after the vaccine. You intended that this vaccine could probably help the patient or help the person develop immunity against the disease. But 80% of them have developed the disease. What decision, or rather, would that help in decision making? Would that help in making a decision that is useful in terms of progress towards the intervention? The answer, of course, is yes. And therefore, when we do these interventions, or rather when we do these data collection methods, our intention is to help us in decision making. Like we said, it is to help us in planning and so on and so forth. So I was about to mention other applications in test and assessments, and that is competency-based education assessments. That one is just as like we have talked about literacy, numeracy, and subject mastery. Teacher professional competency assessment. You know, all these could also we can use tests and assessments in determining teacher professional competency and assessment. How that can be done is probably by subjecting teachers to tests, subjecting teachers to an assessment that you help us to determine to what level, in terms of percentage, in terms of numbers, our teachers are competent or have developed the competency that is desired. Now, let's move on to showing sample tests and assessment. A sample test and assessment. And the purpose here is to measure learner or teacher competencies. That's what we want to measure. And this, we can be able to do it by literacy tests, assessing reading, comprehension, and writing skills. We can also do that by measuring teacher subject mastery test aligned to the curriculum, where we do considerations such as when we want to align test items to learning outcomes, or when we want to ensure fairness and standardization. So in this kind of test, we want to align the test items to the learning outcomes. We also want to ensure that there is fairness and standardization. So this should tell you how some of the things that we need to consider when we are doing tests and assessment, even in our classroom setups, that we need to have, we need to align our test items to learning outcomes. Always when we go to do a lesson, we always have the learning outcomes. So our tests should be aligned to the outcomes. Why do we need to align our tests to the item, to the outcomes? Because we want to be relevant. We want to bring an assessment, a test that is relevant to what has been taught, so that the indicators that you want to measure are indicators that are linked to the outcomes. They are linked to what is achievable by these subjects that are being assessed. You do not give an assessment, a test on something that is not achievable, that is not realistic. It has to be within what has been taught. And that's what we mean by saying must be aligned to the learning outcomes that has been, like now, if it is, I'm asking a question here, I should ask a question that is relevant to what you ought to achieve in this topic that I'm teaching. Then it should ensure fairness and standardization. We have seen cases of tests that has been done, and tests that has been set rather that are not standardized. They are not standardized. Remember, in a setup, in a classroom setup, you will have learners that are, the ones that you call the fast learners. We have the time takers and those who are average. So when you set a test and you want to collect data on a certain subject, to have that quantitative data, then you must be fair. You must be fair to those who are fast learners. You must be fair to those who are time takers. And therefore, that's why there is need for fairness and also standardization, so that you have an assessment. If it has to be an assessment, remember we are talking about those principles of data collection, whereby you need your data to be reliable. You need your data to be varied. Therefore, if you give learners of grade 5 a test for grade 9, then probably there will be a problem. The data that you get from that kind of an assessment may not be realistic. It may not be representative of the context in which you are measuring or obtaining that data. Therefore, the element of fairness and standardization when doing tests and assessment must be observed. Now, the other method is surveys and questionnaires. And we want to ask ourselves how surveys and questionnaires can help us in obtaining quantitative data. Quantitative data. And we say that surveys involve the use of structured questionnaires with predefined questions and response options. Predefined questions and response options. This is what you call closed-ended questionnaire. Closed-ended questionnaire, where you give the options. You can give the option of yes or no. You can give the option of poor. You can start with very poor, fair, or average, good, very good. Those are the options. So that the respondent would pick one of the responses. That's what we mean by response options. And that is what we call closed-ended questionnaire. Structured questionnaires are given, and in an education application, we can use it in learner attendance and dropout, in measuring learner attendance and dropout rates. We can use it in teacher workload deployment. You can use it to determine availability of textbooks and learning materials. You can use it in satisfaction levels of learners, also teachers and also for parents. So you can use questionnaires, surveys and questionnaires. You can use these to determine so many things, like I have just mentioned: learner attendance, teacher workload, availability of textbooks. Develop a questionnaire. For example, we can have a questionnaire on quantitative data on learner attendance and engagement. You want to, who is this who want to leave the class early? This is Patricia Mwangi. You want to leave the class early? It's good that we don't have a long time to go. We have around 20 minutes, and then I'm just about to finish so that I can give you an exercise or an activity. So it's good to be patient so that you're able to finish together. I wanted to give an example of a questionnaire about learner attendance, whereby you can ask learners, how many days did you attend school last week? For example, you can ask that question: how many days did you attend school last week? And then you know the maximum days that can be attended are 5. So the learner has the option of saying 1, 2, or rather can start 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you have 20 learners and you have 5 of them saying 0, you have another 5 saying 1, another 5 saying 2, another 5 saying 5. Then you can be able now to analyze that data and be able to know what percentage of learners were absent during that week, what percentage had attended only 2 days, what percentage attended 3 days, what percentage attended 5 days. So that is what we mean by data, quantitative data, when that you can use in applying educational setup to determine attendance. The same thing can happen with the dropout rates. Maybe another question that can be done: how long does it take you to travel from home to school? If, for example, you want to assess what could be attributing to the learner attendance or the dropout rate. Someone who takes 30 minutes, maybe they could indicate 30 minutes, or let's say below 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, such. You're able now to assess what could be the contributing factors. If you find that a learner takes a very long time to get home, then probably, you could find a trend, see whether the dropout rate is associated with the distance the learner is covering to go home. Then you could also ask another question. We are still in a service. Do you feel safe and supported at school? Do you feel safe and supported at school? So if a learner says yes, you determine how many learners says yes, how many learners says no. And if you have a high dropout rate, then, and you have a high percentage of learners saying no, then you would say that probably that is the reason why the dropout rate could be high. If, of course, it is contrary, then that could explain the reason why there is no dropout rate, or the dropout rate is low. Another question that probably can be posed in a questionnaire and help us to obtain quantitative data is: how often do you miss school due to household responsibilities? You can ask, how often do you miss school due to household responsibilities? And probably you can have fixed responses like never, sometimes, often. So again, if you have, say, 20%, or rather 50% saying never, 20% saying sometimes, and say 30% saying often, then probably that could also help you, that analysis could also help you to make some decision or some determination on why there is fluctuation in learner attendance, and also explain the dropout rates. This is an example of questionnaire, survey, and questionnaire that can be used in obtaining quantitative data. And you can have the same even with the teacher workload and deployment. You can also have the same in terms of availability of textbooks, learning material. You can design a questionnaire just similar to the one I've just mentioned. And also, you can also be able to measure satisfaction levels of learners and also teachers using similar questionnaire. And this can be done even in other setups like security. It can also be used in other setups like health, agriculture, and so on and so forth. We're only using education here because all of us at some point we were educationists, or we are educationists at some level. So I want us to mention some of the key considerations when we are doing data collection, and also another sample survey questionnaire. And I think this is the one I was just reading. That one we have done. I have a case study and an overview. This this will be our next topic. We look at that case study. But before we look at that case study, I want us to look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of some of these quantitative and quantitative data collection methods. One advantage of quantitative data collection method is that you can be able to cover large populations. You can also be, that's one advantage in quantitative data. You are able to cover large populations. You just simply distribute the surveys, the questionnaires, and then you collect the questionnaires back, in a large population. It is easy to analyze, when you have yes or no, good, fair, poor, and so on and so on. You just pick all fairs or goods or poors, and then you say how many each category has. So therefore, it becomes very easy. It enables comparison across groups. That's also an advantage, that it allows comparison across groups. It also provides objective measurement of learning outcomes. It is objective. Objective means that it is not subject, it cannot be manipulated. So if, for example, you have given a test and the results are 50% below average, that is exactly what it is. No manipulation. So again, it is useful for baseline, midline, and endline assessments. So quantitative data, it is very, very useful when we talk about baseline. If before intervention, the dropout rate was 30%, and then after intervention, the dropout rate is 10%, that becomes very useful, because the baseline and the headline are clearly manifested through the percentages. Probably even the mid-range could also come in. So what are some of the limitations of quantitative data collection methods? One, we talk about limited depth of information. Limited depth of information. There is no explanation. If it is 20%, there's no reason for why it is 20%. There's no reason why it is 1:1. There's no reason why it is 1:5. There's no reason why it is 30, 40, 50. No explanation. So therefore, limited depth of information. Risk of inaccurate responses in questions that are poorly designed. You also have a situation where if the questionnaire is not well designed, you may get wrong information. That's why sometimes we say it is good to verify. It is good to do a pilot to test the questionnaire, so that it is able to collect accurate data. So if the questionnaire is wrong, or if it is inaccurate, or rather if it is wrongly designed or poorly designed, then there is a risk of getting inaccurate responses. Where you probably should get a yes, you could be getting a no, and the vice versa. The other disadvantage of quantitative data is that you may not be able to capture contextual factors that are influencing a certain trend. Contextual factors that are influencing a certain, thread or a certain performance. Some explanation on what could be leading to a certain data. Then the other disadvantage is that this quantitative data requires a lot of care in standardization so that you ensure fairness. So I don't know how like when you are doing a test, how often do you do standardization? How often do you say this question is not fair for the time takers? This question is not fair for the fast learners. How many times do we do that? And therefore, if it will probably take a lot of time, and probably therefore makes it a disadvantage for quantitative data, because if for us to obtain accurate quantitative data, then you require a lot of due diligence in standardization so that there is fairness and you are able to acquire accurate data. So, ladies and gentlemen, I had a lot of a case study whereby we want to look at transition from primary to junior secondary school. And I was looking at a county education office notes low transition rates from grade 6 to junior secondary school in selected nodes, zones. And from that, we were to obtain data on qualitative data and then analysis of enrollment and transition statistics. So from this case study, I wanted you to develop quantitative data that we can obtain from this case study. The quantitative approach that we can use to get data for this case study. Is it survey, questionnaire? Is it test and assessment? A county education office notices low transition rates from grade 6 to junior secondary school in selected zones. So we want to understand why is this happening? Why is there low transition rates from grade 6 to junior secondary school in selected zones? And therefore, which is the best data, qualitative data collection method? The best qualitative data collection method. And for us to be able to obtain the best quantitative data collection method, we need to identify the indicators. The indicators for low transition rates from grade 6 to junior secondary school. What could be the indicators? So that now from the indicators, we are able to develop a questionnaire. For example, we are talking about analysis of enrollment and transition statistics. Analysis of enrollment and transition statistics. So therefore, one of the questions probably you would ask is, what is the number of learners enrolled in grade 6 in 2025? What were the number of learners enrolled in grade 6 in 2025? 2025. Then, of course, there will be the response. Now, which is this indicator that you are looking for when you ask that question? What was the number of learners in grade 6 in 2025? Then, what is the number of learners admitted in grade 7 in 2026 in that particular zone? So therefore, you need to obtain the number of all learners who have been enrolled in grade 7 in 2026 in this particular zone. So what are the indicators for that particular question? So that is that's just an example of the questionnaire that you can develop to obtain quantitative data for this particular case study. So I wanted us to take home this. You go and unfortunately, I have not written this in this particular in any slide here, but I want you to go and think of another case study, and I hope you write this. Can you hear me, all of you? So that we can now write this as a case study that you go and think about. From the case study I have given an example of a questionnaire that we can use, and the indicators that we can derive from that questionnaire. I want us to go and look at this case study, improving learner attendance. Improving learner attendance. Hope you're writing. Improving learner attendance in rural secondary school. I want to see whether I can be able to have this in a. I want to see whether I can be able to write this for you or post it for you right now. Just a minute. Just a minute. As I see where that is. Where that case study is. Yes, so let me share. It seems it will not be possible to share that right now. I thought it could be available. It is not. Anyway, just write the way it was. Improving learner attendance in a rural secondary school, and write this. A public secondary school. Let me see if I can write on the chat. See whether you can be able to read that in my chat, on the chat, so that even I read for you, you're able to read the chat and see what is written there. That a public school in a rural county records frequent learner absenteeism, especially in Form 1 and 2. School records show an average attendance rate of 68%. The Board of Management wants to understand both the magnitude of absenteeism and the reasons behind it. I hope you have captured that. Can you be able to read that in my chat? If you can, please respond.
I can't see it from the chat.
You can't see it from the chat?
It's not there.
Mm-hmm. Are you sure you can't read it? Let me share something. No, it is not possible. It's not there in my. I'm not able to read it from the content that I have. I don't know why. Let me close it. Let's see whether it will be possible to get it. Give me presentation. No, it is not. It will not be possible. So now I wanted you to go and from what I have, a public secondary school in a rural county records frequent learner absenteeism, especially in Form 1 and 2. School records show an average attendance rate of 68%. The Board of Management wants to understand both the magnitude of absenteeism and the reasons behind it. Now, I wanted you to go and develop a quantitative data correction method using survey and questionnaire approach or method. Develop a quantitative data collection method using a survey and a questionnaire, or rather a survey and questionnaire, to help understand this trend in this particular school. So you want to develop a questionnaire so that you're able to obtain quantitative data on that explains this trend of average attendance rate of 68% in these learning institution in Form 1 and Form 2. So that it helps it helps the Board of Management to understand the magnitude of absenteeism and the reasons behind it. Remember, I said for for example, if you're not talking about reasons behind it, then probably you need to develop a questionnaire or questions that are close-ended. So you can develop several reasons so that the learner can be able to tick on the reason that suits them best. I can see, I don't know whether this is somebody has posted that again, but you'll be able to see that that in my chat. I've just written that in the chat, so you should be able to obtain that information. Still, I'll post that in the on the wall. I'll still post that on the wall so that we are able to. I think I can even do that now. So that we are able to, yeah, it is on the wall. So you can also be able to read that from in our wall, in our common wall. So now we do not have any challenge. Just go and develop a questionnaire so that we are able to obtain quantitative data. And remember, it is quantitative data for that matter. So ladies and gentlemen, today I've spoken a lot. We didn't have much of an activity. Reason behind it, I wanted to make sure that I cover what I wanted to cover within the time limits that we had, given that we had almost half an hour when we did not have the class going on. I said I was in another class and my students were in another class. I had thought for another 30 minutes, but nobody was in that class. So I want to end it there unless there is any question. So that we meet next time to do qualitative data and also the mixed approach. Questions, clarifications, comments? Probably if you did not get the assignment or rather the activity, seems there is no comment, seems there is no question. I don't know whether Elvis is there. Elvis is in the room. Elvis. Or somebody from Kemi, the ICT department.
Yeah, I'm here. Yes, hello, I'm here.
Yes. Yeah, we are adding the class.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I don't take it for granted having all of us here to this time. And it's only that our able facilitator at first alikuwa in a different class na sisi tukimgoja, but all the same the class has been a success. The question that has been posed to all of us is in the chat. I have typed it. I think wenye hawakuipata wataipata. It's in the chat. As we come to the
I've
end of
also
the
posted it in the wall, in the monitoring and evaluation wall.
yeah,
And
so we can all
probably,
access the question on
yeah,
all.
we can all access it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a case study.
Yeah, so as the class comes to an end, we were all asked whether there's anyone with a question or any point to be clarified before we end the class. And since it seems there's no one with a question, then I'd like to hand over to Mr. Steve Kibe to conclude the meeting for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Without much ado, I think we end it there. On Friday, same time, we meet. Well, I hope we have our class start exactly at 5:30 so that we are able to end well. Otherwise, I'm happy that we have been able to achieve what I had intended to achieve within the time allocated for us. Thank you so much. Let's meet next week, God willing. Have a good evening.
Okay, before we finish, will we have a volunteer to pray for us as we close the meeting?
A volunteer to pray for us. Good always to add, thank God for the successful time we had together in this class.
Okay, I can see Esther Cherono and Agnes Omugi are willing to close for us with a word of prayer. So one of them can go ahead.
Okay, let's pray. Our dear everlasting Father, we want to thank you this evening for the care you have taken upon us and for leading us throughout this session. We pray that as we continue with all the sessions remaining, may you guide us. In Jesus' name I pray and believe. Amen.
Amen. Amen. No, Elvis, before you close, there's something I have remembered. And
Yes,
this was a concern to everyone. I could see that there is need to have the recorded session on topic 2. So there's that topic where the first subtopic where there were a lot of interruptions due to the internet. If you can, maybe you can post it on the wall so that those who are not able to follow, they can be able to revisit or review the recorded version. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay, to answer that, all our classes are usually recorded. And for those who are requesting for the recorded version, it's always there, and we can always share the links to the YouTube recordings.
Yeah, just share the links for them to do with them.
It's okay, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for your time. Our class has come to an end.